time after the war, you're very welcome. I invite you.
Yes. That sounds good. Well, I look forward to visiting once things are...
Starlink services in Ukraine, an opportunity or a danger in disguise? We'll find out soon. The news of the Russian invasion of Ukraine has spread like wildfire, with several countries, such as the US, joining forces with Ukraine to end this sooner. Now, what's the purpose of the tech billionaire Elon Musk in this mid-century crisis, and how did he give the Ukrainian people a helping hand? When we think of Elon Musk, we think of Tesla, SpaceX, PayPal, and of course, Musk's bold and powerful tweets that stir up controversies in a matter of seconds. Not too long ago, Elon, by establishing Starlink, decided to tap into the internet industry and potentially outcompete all the other internet service providing industries. Soon after beginning its operations, Starlink went global, so much so that it reached Ukraine when other internet companies were failing to do so. However, some of resulting dangers of the internet accessibility in Ukraine have recently come to Elon's notice, and so he announced that something has to be done immediately to alleviate any severe damages. The world is changing drastically every day, and we all need to keep up with the new and mind-boggling information if we don't want to be left behind. It's justified if you're wondering, what exactly is Starlink, and why did Elon Musk send Starlink services to Ukraine as a sign of alliance and support? What potential dangers were caused by the Starlink services, and what was Musk's plan of action? Stay tuned to get all your answers. Starlink and Ukraine. Elon's cyberspace project named Starlink aims to provide internet to everyone, all around the globe, via a network of orbiting satellites. This network is technically a division of SpaceX, a project under the latter company's space exploration venture. Just when we thought the current satellites could not get any better, the high-tech Starlink will operate by transmitting information through the vacuum of space, allowing even the remotest areas on Earth to access the internet. Now that we've glanced over the nitty-gritties of Starlink, let's move forward to understanding why Ukraine welcomed the internet services by the US in a state of a war zone. SpaceX had already provided the internet to Ukraine, but a Russian cyber attack made the Ukrainian government seek further assistance from Elon Musk. Amid general havoc in Ukraine, the Russian forces deployed troops to destroy infrastructure and, consequently, the networking source of all commercial and residential areas. To Ukraine's fortune, Musk's Starlink came to the rescue on February 26, 2022, by sending an ample amount of Starlink dishes, called dishies, as Ukraine's Prime Minister Fedorov requested for the internet services. Luckily, France and Poland stepped up to further smooth out service by funding Starlink shipments. Who knows when the country will get back on its feet, let alone have restored internet services. But it wouldn't hurt if the richest man on Earth offered his support to a country that needed it most, would it? And given that Musk is an absolute sucker for controversy, he didn't spare the opportunity to come to the limelight again. P.S. Another instance of his deep-rooted love for attention occurred during the COVID-19 outbreak, where Elon announced on Twitter that Tesla would be making ventilators. This never happened, but it did get him a lot of attention and publicity. Will Starlink change the course of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict? Now, a question arises. Did the satellites and network links provided by Elon Musk actively play a part in changing the course of war? Or were these satellites overhyped? Well, to tell you the truth, they might be a tad overhyped and unnecessary. Having an invasion doesn't directly translate to a full-blown internet blackout. In fact, it's extremely difficult, if not practically impossible, for a few troops to come over and destroy all the internet connections provided by not one, not two, but several different companies through many different mediums. Oh, and let us remind you that this isn't the first time Ukraine's dealt with Russia's cyber attacks, so they weren't entirely unprepared either. After decades of being subjected to Russian internet attacks, Ukraine has established nearly impenetrable internet services and has become resistant and resilient in the face of any possible cyber attacks, even without Musk's involvement. In fact, Musk might have made things worse for Ukraine, because Starlink in Ukraine was not entirely faultless. One potentially endangering issue is that Starlink's network terminals are quite visually evident. Even though Musk suggested that the system be lightly camouflaged, experts analyzed that such a modification is not enough to make it less obvious. Secondly, Starlink has an immensely wide user base. That is, people from all over the world have started using it. Added to the workload of using the Starlink in the middle of a conflict situation, and naturally, there would be a greater risk of overloading the system, making it susceptible to cyber attacks. What's more is that, like any traditional communication system, Starlink generates trackable signals. Thus, if Russia wanted, it can easily track and locate where the Starlink's dish is set up. However, we cannot completely rule out Starlink's usefulness to the country in desperate times. Fedorov stated that Starlink is doing a good job in keeping cities within the loop. Being an avid supporter of Starlink, Fedorov installed Dishy in his premises and urged companies to install it to improve their overall communication process as well. Along with that, Ukrainians have managed to stay connected and present their case to the rest of the world watching through social media apps accessed via Starlink. Can Russia hack Starlink? Here's where it gets interesting. On March 1st, 2022, SpaceX CEO Elon Musk stated that several terminals around the exposed and endangered Ukrainian territories were being jammed for several hours a day. 3 days later, Musk issued another warning via another tweet. He truly might be obsessed with Twitter, suggesting that Starlink is the only non-Russian system operating in many parts of Ukraine, and that alone is incentive enough for Russian cyber attack on the system. And so, Starlink should only be turned on when needed. Additionally, he suggested that users should keep the antenna as far away from them as possible, and also keep it lightly camouflaged. This is to avoid the system's visibility and to reduce the threat of any cyber attacks. On the same day, Musk tweeted that the system software is being updated to reduce as much power consumption as possible, and the reduction is equivalent to a car being powered by a cigarette lighter. Not only that, an enabled mobile roaming will allow the antenna, even on a moving vehicle, to catch and maintain the internet signals. On March 4th, he tweeted a rather concerning set of information, warning that the Russians might target Starlink services. This meant that the internet might put the users of the respected network under potential danger because there was a high probability of the system being tracked by the hackers. On March 5th, 2022, Elon then tweeted that SpaceX is reprioritizing its current cyber defense endeavors and overcoming signal jamming. Additionally, this reprioritization can potentially result in the delays of Starship and Starlink version 2. If you're wondering what Starlink version 2 and Starship are, let's give you a brief idea. Starlink V2 is essentially a sequel or a modification to Starlink, but the details of V2's features have not been explicitly shared. The second-gen Starlink will be launched via Starship planes, which are in the midst of developmental processes, and therefore cannot proceed with the launch unless a license is obtained from Federal Aviation. However, the other SpaceX initiatives do not seem to be as affected by the shift in resources to cyber defense security in Ukraine. On the same day, Musk also said that Starlink does not plan on removing news sources from Russia from its network unless held at gunpoint. There's so much more to say, but let's wrap it up for the day. So far, we found out that Starlink services, Musk's initiative of global internet provision, were sent to Ukraine after Fedorov feared a communication blackout and appealed for Starlink terminals. Like any other communication system, it has its own pros and cons. Even though it improved the overall Ukrainian communication situation, the country might have survived without its provision too. Additionally, since it was the only non-Russian system operating in some parts of Ukraine and was quite distinctive, Starlink was threatened to be targeted and hacked by Russians. And so, the response from SpaceX CEO was a decision to utilize the company's resources towards cyber defense temporarily. Was there an actual need for the Starlink systems to be installed in Ukraine? Can anything be done to improve the issues associated with Starlink? Is Musk doing the right thing diverting his resources towards cyber defense? Feel free to give your opinions in the comment section below.